Hello, Gene here with the thought for today. Working in my home office today, I had the audio on for the Supreme Court as they listened to arguments in two related cases, so they heard them both on the same day, and they both had to do with the president's student loan forgiveness. I guess, yeah, you'd have to call it a program, actually, a program. I think, I'm not a lawyer, but my sense is that the plaintiffs had the better of the argument against the government. We'll see what happens, but that's my sense from the argument. That there were basically two issues. Number one, at least in one of the cases, whether the plaintiffs had standing at all to bring the suit in the first place. I'm not going to go into a lot of details. I'm trying to keep these things short, but you can look it up, read an article about it. The other argument was that, well, whether the government had the power to create the program. And that's where I think the conservatives had the better of the argument. It was the HEROES Act. That's the name of the act under which the administration presumed to create to forgive, I think, half $500 billion of loans, a lot of student loans, and where I think the plaintiffs got the better of the argument was that the government argued that the law specifically allows the government in an emergency to waive or modify the statute to meet some kind of unforeseen emergency. Now, the plaintiffs argued, yeah, but when you say waive or modify, what you're talking about is you're talking about making a change or waiving something that's already there in the act. And there's nothing in the act about forgiving loans. There's nothing that discusses loans at all. So when the government created this program, they created it out of thin air. They just created it to meet this so-called emergency. And you're going to find out why I do this, the scare quotes. You'll find out in a few minutes. Well, hopefully only 1 minute. I'm going to try to keep this short. But the plaintiffs argued, yeah, that they're creating something brand new, and so therefore the law doesn't apply. Now, my thought for today, actually three thoughts. There are questions that had I been a justice, and don't worry, I'm not going to be a Supreme Court justice anytime soon, but had I been one, there are some questions I would have asked, and the first one would be, well, why is the HEROES Act called the HEROES Act? Now, I'm going to have to look at my computer screen and read the HEROES Act. This is what the official name of the act is. The Health and Economic Recovery Omnibus Emergency Solutions Act. And if you put the first part of that together, it's an acronym. You get HEROES. So question is, I would have asked, is that a coincidence that the act was named in such a way that it's spelled heroes, the acronym was HEROES? And of course, obviously the answer is no. They wanted to send a message, because that's part of what the argument was about. What was Congress's intent? Did they intend for the administration to have this power to create this, to forgive all these loans? Now, the HEROES Act, the reason it was called HEROES Act, the reason they went through the trouble to come up with a name so the acronym would be HEROES, is because it was supposed to apply to veterans, to soldiers, to veteran soldiers who, for whatever emergency might have, that they would have the loans and could not repay them, or would need some other kind of, perhaps, I didn't read the act, some other kind of emergency relief. The whole point is that it's obviously meant to apply to soldiers and not to college students who, especially these liberal college students, the chances that they're ever going to volunteer for the military are pretty small, I would say. But anyways, that's one question I would have asked. Now, there are a couple more, and I wrote them down here. Okay, this is the real meat of the argument that I would have asked. Maybe there's some kind of decorum that in the Supreme Court that you're not allowed to state the obvious. And the obvious questions I would have asked, first of all, is an election an emergency? Or more specifically, if you're the party in power and there's an election coming up and you're worried about the election, is that an emergency that you may lose the election, or that you're worried that you could lose the election? Is that an emergency? And the answer obviously would be no, but I would love to see what the government would answer, because obviously, well, let's go to the second point, would be, well, if it's not an emergency, then does the administration have the power to forgive loans for a specific voting group in order to get those people to vote for them? And that the answer to that is screamingly obvious too, that the administration, to curry favor with young college students, to get the youth vote, they floated this idea of forgiving loans, and that's how you could argue that they gave, in fact, I have seen statistics, I seem to recall, don't hold me to it, but that if it wasn't the deciding factor, that certainly it was a motivating factor in getting more students than ordinarily would have voted, because young young people generally don't vote as assiduously or as faithfully as people of my generation. So obviously, on those two bases, or those three bases that I just named, the government has no argument. They had no power to do it, and I just wish that somebody on the Supreme Court, one of these learned, brilliant justices, would have asked that question. That's my thought for today. Thanks a lot for stopping by. If you enjoyed this thought for the day and would like to be sure not to miss any more, because I can't always do them every day on a regular schedule, then you should subscribe. But that's it for now. Thanks a lot, and bye.